There's a lot of different things that go on with the shoulder, so I want to kind of go over some of those with you today. I'm Dr. Joe Labriola from Chiro Health Spa, Ramsey, New Jersey. So let me explain a little bit about the shoulder. We all think of a shoulder as a ball and socket joint, right? It sits like this, and then it can have all different types of motions. There's actually three major joints that go along with the shoulder itself. So it's not just the ball and socket. That's what we call the glenohumeral joint, which is right in here. But there's another one. There's also what we call the AC joint, which is right up here where your clavicle meets in here. And then there's another one that most people don't really consider part of the shoulder, but it's very important. And it's called the SC joint, or where your sternum is. And it's right where your clavicle or your collarbone meets up right there. So all three of these joints actually have a lot of bearing as to what's going to happen with shoulder pain, shoulder restriction, shoulder motion, and we have to look at all of these. So our job, from what we're going to evaluate this joint as, is to figure out how these joints are moving, and then we're going to adjust them based on what we see. So where chiropractic really comes in with shoulder pain is, if we're talking specifically about the shoulder, we're going to analyze several different motions. So let's say, for example, we're going to have you raise your arm up. If we find that there's restriction on this, we know that that's a particular area, okay? If we have a motion, let's bring you up like this, for example, and then I'm just going to have you hinge your arm down. If this one is restricted, we know that there's something going on in one particular area. If we hinge it back and something else hurts, for example, we know that this is another area. I might have you reach behind your back, for example. I might have you reach over the top of your head. And we're going to check all of these different motions to figure out what exactly is going on with this shoulder. So now, once we have isolated exactly where the problem is, then we can get to adjusting it, all right? And this is where chiropractic will come in with a shoulder in particular. We're going to do this in two separate ways. Sometimes one way, sometimes both ways. Sometimes we might physically just adjust it by hand, okay? So for example, I might have you put your arms like this. I might try to have you push your elbow back here and push this way to try to motion that joint and reposition it, all right? Sometimes it's easier to actually use an instrument. So the instrument that I'll use here is something like this, where I'll get into a particular point and I'll just real softly just go in and kind of isolate that one particular spot, and not only isolate it, but guide it back into its normal neutral position. Now, depending on how long you've had the shoulder pain or where this restriction has been, this may be a short process or it may be a longer process, and that's really where our examination and our thorough evaluation is going to come in. But we're going to look at all different motions of the shoulder. We're going to evaluate all the different possibilities that it might be, and then try to figure out what type of adjustment is actually going to be the best for it. And most times, nobody else that you've gone to for your shoulder pain has actually looked to reposition the joint in this manner. But it's the idea that if the joint is misaligned or subluxated in a small misalignment, we just want to guide it back to get it to where it's supposed to be. So these are the different ways that we'll do this, and we'll try to use different manners of all kinds to try to make sure that that joint is the most stable, not only for the short term, but for the long term, all right? So that's how chiropractic can really help shoulder pain. I hope that helped. I look forward to seeing you on the next video.